in this age of AI, the question isn't like how good you are at making a mid-journey prompt, is do you understand how this AI works and how it's changing and how it's adapting? That's the new tree.
Ndion podcast, presented by the German Design Council.
Welcome to a special episode of the Ndion podcast. In this episode, we have the privilege of sitting down with John Maeda, a visionary thinker, designer, and educator. Forbes named him one of the most influential people of the 21st century, and Wired magazine said that Maeda is to design what Warren Buffett is to finance. Join us as we delve into the intersection of design and artificial intelligence, exploring the evolving landscape of technology, its impact on design, and the path to a more hopeful future. John Maeda shares insights and anecdotes about his experiences as a designer, his time as a professor at MIT, and he talks about UFOs eating avocados. Stay tuned for a fascinating Ndion episode with John Maeda. When I prepared this interview, I had the book Maeda at Media.
Oh, that's a very old book.
Yeah, it's an old book.
Yeah, I don't know.
We have it in our library.
Yeah.
And there was the story you told about you had Paul Rand one day. And you had it for a lecture, or it was planned to have him for a lecture. And then he said, no, I don't like to have a lecture. Let's talk.
Yes, yeah.
And then you asked the first question.
Yep.
What is design?
I did ask him that.
Yeah, and what is your answer?
My answer is, I think design, unfortunately, means design, which to many people means buying cool things.
Yeah.
And because design means cool things, people think that designers make cool things. And when people want to become designers, they think their job is to make cool things. What I really think instead design is it is simply a psychological treatment of a commoditized product that generates demand, enables communication of the quality, not just visually but physically and socially, so that a deeper meaning is attached to the commoditized product. I say commoditized because all products are valuable when they are differentiated. Most times, technology is how you differentiate. It doesn't matter if it's good or not. Is it fast? Great. Is it faster? Awesome. Who cares how it feels or how it looks or whatever? It's faster. But if there are many companies, individuals selling the same thing, that's the same level of fast, how does the consumer choose? That's where design has a massive impact on selection. However, I've discovered that many designers hate this definition because they think it misses the spirituality and the blah, 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 the triangle, the circle, the square, the magic shamanism of design or blah, blah, blah. I used to be part of that religion, but I left it because I found it limiting.
Mm-hmm. So your definition changed?
My definition changed because I live in the world of business, and I understand that design is a tool to enable more industry success, all the way back to the Bauhaus, which I know that this center talks about it too. It was a project of the economic ministry to be able to differentiate what was commoditized manufactured products because the British were reputed to having higher quality products. But what is quality? Who knows what that means? And the British were jealous of the French. And so they made the V&A Museum, the Royal College of Art. So the Bauhaus was a similar reaction in Germany, but the French in the 1700s, the best, quote unquote, design, meaning that they were able to sell something that is very common for a much higher price. So the business proposition of design in each century existed, but as design grew up as a field, it became more spiritual and mystical and special. Mm-hmm.
I think it also was in Maeda at Media. You said it's not the problem for a designer to design. It's the problem for him to get a company who wants to take the risk. Has that something to do with the business?
Oh, well, I don't know what I said in the past, so it's always useful to kind of remember. That's something that Paul Rand said in that, maybe not that conversation, but one of his books. He always said design was a function of the client. If you had a quote unquote good client, you would succeed. If you had a bad client, you'd succeed less. I think about this question of the good customer or the good company that wants to use design. I think they understand how to use it well. And I think they use it well when they need to take a risk. But if they don't need to take a risk, they don't really need design, quote unquote. Because design is a risky thing. Because, when you describe the problem, let's say looking at this, I love this water glass container. There's literally hundreds of thousands of water glass containers that could be made, could be finished. Maybe one company decided to make it thinner than usual, which is not good because it could break more easily. But they have an existing product that does fine. 90% of business is great. They can't take a risk. There's another company over here, no matter what they do, nothing is selling. Nothing is selling. And so they decide, let's take a risk. Let's choose your design, which is a little scary because it's a thinner glass and it could break. And let's take a risk, and they succeed. That's a very risky thing, to choose a design that is different, is new.
Another thing you mentioned is the story of the Japanese carpenter who is building the temples. And he said the temple is stable because I choose the material for the south wall with trees who are growing in the south or towards the south. It's a good metaphor, I think, not only for products, to synchronize structures and systems, or
maybe, yeah. I've always thought that was probably one of the most important things that I learned, which is common in every field. You're going to make a team. Who do you want in your team? You want good people. You're going to make a meal, an incredible meal for the president or the prime minister. You have to have the right materials. I think everything comes down to the materials, and it's such an obvious thing. And when you think of modernism, I think that was kind of what was being communicated, that it was about the materials, because once you have many layers between the material and the fabrication process and the marketing of it, et cetera, you forgot what it was made out of. And I think that, the thing I like about very foundational design education is that you have to understand the human body, which you can only understand by knowing the skeletal structure and the nervous structure and the muscular structure, or even now the cognitive structure, the neuroscience too. I think that's a wonderful way to attack the question of making things, going down to the materials. But it's expensive because it takes more time to get down to the 5 whys. Why? Oh, that took so much time. Only you have the time can it go to the essential story, the core. But most of us need to finish something tomorrow or next day. So I don't know what you're talking about. I don't care about the wood. I'm selling a table, Tell me the table works. No, I'm talking about the wood. Who cares about the wood?
and tomorrow I sell a new one.
Tomorrow I'm selling a glass table. So I think this kind of thinking is expensive. So an organization has to be willing to take the risk to spend more on what could be a better outcome, financial outcome.
When we don't talk about physical materials, in your opinion, software is not a tool, it's a medium, and it's mostly non-visible. So it's a different thing to a table, or is it a different thing to a table?
It's just so different from anything that I found it hard to explain, because it is completely invisible And the best analogy I've found is a mathematician. Like a mathematician uses equations and symbols and everything, but that's not what they're thinking in their own head. They're just representations for the conceptual thing that they cannot draw or express. So when I think of the world of computation, it's much worse than the mind of a mathematician. It's millions, trillions, quintillions more complex than a mathematician can wield with just symbols anymore. And once you realize that other world exists, you can get a little sense of how amazing anything on the internet really is. The fact that one request put onto network can access billions of other computers at the same time, it seems impossible. If you live in the material world, you have a seed, and the seed grows, and it takes decades, and then it's a tree kind of thing. I think in this world, one tiny thing is connected to billions of other things, and when you move it or reshape it, it changes everything at the same time. So the laws of physics don't apply. That's why I think that I've been loving the world of quantum mechanics. Not that I could ever understand it, but I love the phenomenon, because the phenomenon I never understood until I invited a physicist named Lisa Randall. She's like the role model for the Jodie Foster character in the movie Contact. Brilliant physicist, you know? So anyways, she's like super genius. And so I invited her to give a talk about things she's thinking about. And then she showed this image that like changed my entire world. And what it was an image of scale. So think of like a vertical axis of like 10 to the 0, 10 to the 1, 10 to the 2, 10 to the 3, higher. And then 10 to the 0, 10 to the minus 1, 10 to the minus 2, smaller.
So it has to do with the Eames power of 10? Or?
Well, oh my gosh, I have so many feelings about the Eames power of 10. Yes, because I bring that up because some people don't know the powers of 10, by the way, so you can tell it's a dated thing, so that's good. We know it. Technically, like, what is that? So it was a thing. It was before the internet, so we couldn't see everything. Now there's NFTs to whatever. There were so few amazing things, the powers of 10. Powers of 10, by the way, there is a Dutch illustrator who wrote a book called The Cosmic Something. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Once you see it, you will never want to see the powers of 10 anymore. I forgot. I found the book on eBay. It's out of print, of course, but the book, it's about this thick. It's a very thin book, and you flip it, and it shows like 10 to the 0 and a black and white square of like a person lying down. And you go 10 to the 1, and you see them zoomed out. It's exact same thing as powers of 10.
When was it published?
It was before the powers of 10, right? You know what I'm saying? So it was like, and then you get 10. I was like, wait, this is exactly And then if you read carefully, the powers of 10, like really look for the, influenced by that guy. I wonder how that guy felt. Like, it must have been.
Was he still living then?
He was a Dutch person, and so I think I don't know. I think he must have thought those Americans.
What are they doing?
What are they doing? Powers of 10. So the Powers of 10 film is incorrect, is what I realized because of Lisa Randall. So she said 10 to the 0, 10 to the 1, 10 to the 2. Right. So she says somewhere around 10 to the 30 something, we cannot imagine space anymore. There's no beautiful image of zooming out anymore. It just, our reality disappears. So that's why they created the field of theoretical physics, she said. It's a completely different field than regular physics. So I was like, what does that mean? And then she went down the opposite direction. 10 to the 0, 10 to the minus 1, to the minus 2. Around 10 to the minus, 27 or something. She says, at this point, you're at the size of the atom, and you're near the nucleus, which in the Eames movie, you zoom into the atom and woo, whatever. Is it at 10 to the minus 20 something? Gravity goes away. Oh, right? So now to go even smaller, the physicists had to invent a new kind of physics. That's quantum mechanics. Then, that's what that means, where gravity doesn't exist. So going back to, I think computation is that world where gravity doesn't exist. And if you've never been there or created complex computational systems, you don't know what people are talking about.
So is that the reason why you say designers have to bang out JavaScript.
I used to say that, but I realized I was terribly incorrect.
Okay, why?
Well, because like writing JavaScript is like drawing a picture of something, which we know doesn't matter. You don't have to understand the thing you're drawing to draw a picture. So I think programming, typing in code is just like drawing a picture, sketching something. Being an architect creating a building is very different from drawing a picture. So I think it's the latter part. Creating the architecture of a giant information system is what's interesting, not drawing a sketch of the emblem of the building.
Okay. What does it mean for artificial intelligence? I mean, we are scared, or some are euphorical. Yeah, AI writes a text, or AI takes an image. But to be serious, that's not true. The AI doesn't write a text. It seems to be a text, and we can read it as a text. Isn't it more an idea of a text or an image?
Well, that's why, all AI is its computation. And that's why, for me, I struggled in the 90s and the 2000s talking about computation and design. And people would look at me funny. So I realized I have to explain computation. That's why I wrote How to Speak Machine. I spent 6 years trying to figure out, how do I explain computation, this quantum shift? In the process, I understood it myself. And so even though the book was a terrible financial failure, nobody bought the book.
As many books.
To me, I loved writing it. It was painful because I had to understand it. And by understanding it, I found a way to explain what computation is, why machine learning is relevant or will become more of a phenomenon. And so I find it funny how, that was 2019 when that was published. It took 4 years for the world to actually have a moment. But AI is just the computation that we've always known. And this AI is different than the old AI. That's the hard part for everyone to understand. When I wrote the book, How to Speak Machine, the AI I was talking about is not the AI that exists today.
Okay, you have to tell us the difference.
The difference is funny. The difference is really funny. Well, I would say funny, that's a kind of a, however you interpret the word funny. Well, let's give it context. I was reading something from the Naval Institute, some information technology advisor. I forget her name, but she described this as bloom and doom. Bloom means like flowers, like, oh, this is amazing, this AI. Doom is like, oh, this AI is going to destroy blah, 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 blah. So like bloom and doom. Okay, so I am of the bloom camp because I find that when humans create things, we are in our curious state and inventive state and sometimes do the right thing. And this new kind of AI, it's important to be in that state, the inventive state. Because then you ask, what is it? How does it work? Versus, oh, this is terrible. I don't want to understand it. It's bad. Don't touch it kind of thing. So doom means, in many senses, don't bother. Bloom means, I don't know. Let's be curious. If you enter the bloom state, you realize that this new AI is different because the old AI was working with too little data. So too little data means, let's say I took everything I've ever said or written, not that very much if you look at my life, and then I train a machine learning model to do things based upon that. It would be very limited because it just knows my world. But that was machine learning 3 years ago. What's different about this new machine learning is that civilization took all this information available and then built a model out of it. And what's important, when we say GPT, the G stands for general pre-trained. Well, they say it's either generative or generalized. I like generalized, even though that's probably the wrong way to the wrong acronym.
Okay. Yeah.
For anyone who's machine learning, oh my gosh, what is he saying? It's the fact that it's a lot of general knowledge. And then it's pre-trained. So it's already kind of like, it's like you go buy a frozen food and you're like, oh, you're too busy to cook. Probably in Europe, you never eat frozen food. I don't know. But in the United States, we're about convenience. A lot of frozen foods, it's pre-trained, no work required, and it has a general knowledge, and it's generative, can generate. I think what's important is that it's so little work to do so much amazing things. In the old days, you would gather all your data, you would train the model. Maybe it takes 7 to 12 months. And in the end, it didn't do very much. Now you just sort of flip a switch and you have this amazing model. And this model can do a lot. That's the difference. And with that model, you can do a lot of predictive things. And when they're predictive and you apply them over time, it doesn't just predict the next word. It can predict the next sentence, the next paragraph, the next 5 paragraphs, a new kind of thing that we never had before. And so what's exciting is what we'll do with that, positively or negatively. And when you think of negative scenarios, the positive people have to ask, well, how do we defend ourselves and humanity?
But is your thesis, when you say how to speak machine, is it like a language to learn? How to speak German or how to speak English? Or
thank you for asking that question, because I've been trying to understand it myself. Computation is not just learning how to program. It's more learning how to think in the world of code. A little different, right? It's kind of like, really it's the same thing. I'll use the example again. At Rhode Island School of Design, I remembered how someone can be very good at drawing an exact replica of something, but they may not understand what they're drawing. Someone can make a bad drawing, not photorealistic, but they understood it much better. So I think of code as the same kind of thing. Someone can write a perfect computer program and they can just program, or like they're good at drawing. Or someone can actually understand the system, the thing you were saying, the abstract aspects of it. They actually are doing something different. That's more computer science versus application of computer programming. So someone who speaks machine is able to, I heard that this said this way, it's like a fluency versus accuracy or something like that. It's something about not just knowing the syntax, but understanding the meaning.
yeah, I would suggest that it is the difference between precision and conciseness.
Yeah. It's different. Yeah, exactly. So when I say how to speak machine, it really is, it's the ability to understand conceptually what the architecture of these computational systems can achieve. And then once you understand that, this new AI is so radically different than the past because this computational architecture is able to create an approximation of meaning. I've heard this described as it's now a calculator of words, calculator of meaning, versus a calculator of numbers. Yeah. And it's happened because of these extremely large, what's called foundation models, which, again, I could take my own data, make my own model. It's a tiny model. This model is a gigantic model. And this model is showing us that it's possible to create an approximation of meaning and to compute with it the same way we would compute with numbers.
And does it have to do with translation?
And the foundation of this technology came from taking text from, I guess, was it English to German or English to French or some different languages. They discovered that something that we all know but we don't ever talk about is when we're reading, we're not reading each word in sequence. We're looking at the entire sentence or the entire paragraph. Previous models could only look one word at a time. This new model can look at the paragraph, the whole essay, the entire book at the same time. Why do we like a good book? Not because the chapter is good. The chapter is relevant in the entire book. That capability we humans have, these models can emulate or model. But it's important to note that the way that these models work is not the same way the human brain works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting because I was at a reception and the greeting words were in French. And besides me stood a man who grew up bilingual, and French and English. And I said, "Oh, I'm lucky I am. You can translate the French speech." And he said, no, sorry, I cannot, because I don't translate. I speak French, and I understand French, and I speak English, and I understand, and there's no need for me to translate. So I never translate. When I hear French, I hear French, and I speak French. That's the difference between, the brain,
and the mechanical thing. It's and so I would argue that you're understanding the meaning, and the meaning is what you're computing with, not the actual words. Again, like 7 months ago, AI was my hobby. Then my parents are aging. They're 88, 89, taking care of them. They live in Redmond, so I had to find a job near Redmond. So I got a job at Microsoft. Many people thought I was ridiculous. Like, oh, AI, who cares about AI? This is like October of last year. Oh, what a dumb idea, John. And then in December, November. So it was funny. It was a strange coincidence. But
You had it in the feeling.
Well, I had a feeling, because I was touching the stuff. But now I spend all my time understanding it. So anything I tell you, like I didn't know 7 months ago because I wasn't focusing my attention on it. These new models, these GPT models have something called attention in them. And it's the ability to be attention on not just here, but in multiple things at the same time. Not just a word, but the paragraph or the essay or the whole thing. We only have so much attention to spend. And so my attention was not spent on AI. Now it is. And now I'm learning so much about it. And I am so struck by how stupid I was about AI, because I was like, wow, a lot has happened.
Can you fantasize what will change, or how will it change your life?
Well, I mean, you can open up the newspapers or look on Twitter or LinkedIn for the latest person to tell you that. So I don't pretend to know. I'll just say that it's changed my perspective on things. It's changed how I think programming can work. Because up to now, programming can only do these kinds of things, A, B, C, D, E. Now programming has potentially the ability to do F, G, H, all the way to Z. I've never spent time thinking about that. So I'm now just writing different systems to do what I thought was not possible. And it is very disturbing how possible it is. And it's also so exciting and interesting. When I say disturbing, it's sort of like that quantum mechanics thing. I can imagine until they invented quantum mechanics, physicists could never touch how to think about something that tiny. But once they had the framework, they were like, wow, I never thought in my lifetime I could think like that. And so you just you pinch yourself and say like, wow, is this real? So that's what is happening to me. However, what's very important for everyone to know is that when you chat with this model, something happens in your brain where a delusion occurs, where you think you're talking to a human being. And actually, because I wrote the book, I had to research the history of all the computer science and AI. And I found Joseph Weizenbaum, who in 1966 invented the first chatbot. And already he recognized that any average person will create the delusion that a computer programming sending words at you could be a human being. So he warned everyone in 1960 and 1970 that it could be a very simple program. If it starts talking to you, the average above intelligence person will believe.
You think that is a person.
Yes, because if you think about it, when we're kids, we play with dolls, and the dolls, we think they're real. Or we call our car Lola or whatever. So we give it a kind of a personality.
Yeah.
So the chat version of this, working with this thing, created more excitement about it, but it's not the only way to use this technology.
Okay, yeah. In your talk in the evening, it's titled Design and AI, Hype or Hope. Will you give an answer?
I think there's hype if you don't understand it. And there's doom if you don't understand it. I think there's much more hope if you understand it. But understanding it, unfortunately, takes effort. And everyone's too busy to apply effort. I hope that more people will be hopeful built upon knowledge of what's actually happening.
What does it mean for design or for designers? You once said design is not vanishing, but it's getting invisible, but it's getting more relevant.
When technology matures, then design is relevant. When technology is ramping up, design becomes less relevant. So in the age of mobile computing, where mobile began to be accessed by everyone, design was very relevant then. Now when AI is rising, I think design is less relevant because the technology is changing so quickly. Once it commoditizes, however, once everybody has access to these foundation models, then they need to rely on design, which people hate to hear. I find designers will tell me, no, design's always important. I was like, yeah, that's always important, but sometimes it's more important, right? you know, I mean, the invention of design in 1950s, in America at least, there were the car companies. And what happens is the cars were not selling in 1952. And so GM hired a person who became the Johnny Ive of GM. And because everybody had like, 0.888 of a car. And the goal was to have 1.3 cars for every American family. How are you going to do that? So, because everybody makes cars. And so the Johnny Ive of the day put like fins on the back of the cars to make it look like a rocket or to add chrome on it so it's shiny. And suddenly, 1.2 cars occurred because of that, because all the cars were commoditized. And that made the cars stand out. So I look at that as an example of when everybody has the same thing, to make something slightly different, the design's a powerful economic force.
So in this context, what would be your advice for young designers now? You always have been a teacher.
I think so, yeah. I've been trying to avoid my past as a teacher, but I spent so much time as it. Cannot run away from it. So it's so sad, but good, but important. Well, I say that because I don't think I know anything. And when someone says you're teaching something, I don't know. Because like for context, I think I wrote it in the book. I mean, I was at MIT, I was a professor. And when you're a professor, you think you're so smart because you're teaching all these people all the time. And then it was in the year 2002 where I realized I was really stupid because computers were much more advanced outside of MIT. And the freshmen were so much smarter than me about the new kind of computers. And I remembered I was in a very important sort of a committee. And there was 2 students on the committee. And there was some problem where MIT professors weren't advising the students. And so we, the MIT professor, the Jedi, was like, oh, that's terrible. We have to help the students with their careers and their futures. And the students got up and looked at us and said, what do you mean you're going to help us with the careers? You don't have jobs. I was like, oh, she's right. She's right. So that's why I escaped. Atlanta. I realize I still am stuck in the world of teaching because I like younger people. And my job has always been to make them better than me. So I still have this kind of curse in me, I guess, which is maybe the curse of the teacher, maybe.
But it is the version of the Asian teacher because they want their pupils get better than them.
Oh, well, I guess not all teachers are like that. Good managers in corporations are taught the same thing, but there's not very good managers too. But no, I think I think my favorite model of teacher is, looking back on the past, you realize what was perhaps valuable versus which was less valuable. It was finding the example of the karate master, the martial arts master, a black belt. The goal is for the black belt to be so worn out that it becomes white. I like this metaphor. It was very poetic for me. And I think you understand yourself. Very few people are like, what does he mean? I'm the master. I'm the best. What are you talking about? Everything is great. I'm in charge. What are you talking about? But some people who are the learners, they love that because they realize, I love to reboot, renew. So, but as this teacher form of them in, I am trying to teach others what I'm learning every day, which changes every day in this AI thing, so that they will be more hopeful. And so designers will be more creative. when I'm saying that, I'm not saying go off and use Midjourney and type some prompts of some amazing UFO with like eating avocado toast or whatever kind of thing. I mean, that's fun, etc. You know, but it's more like if you understand the materials. Going back to the example that you raised from my past of, you know, how does it that a structure in Nara, Japan stands for thousands of years? It's not about architecture or design. It's about the materials, so the trees. And so in this age of AI, the question isn't like how good you are at making a Midjourney prompt. Is do you understand how this AI works and how it's changing and how it's adapting? That's the new tree. And if you understand the tree, you might be able to build different things that the world hasn't understood yet, and they may be more hopeful because of it, versus shocked and in a doom state.
So, John, I think...
We covered everything?
No, not everything. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I love this place. Oh my gosh, Frankfurt. Oh my goodness, this is like the most beautiful. Like I've only flown through Frankfurt.
I've never been here.
I've been here, but only at the airport.
Okay.
So wow, what a beautiful city. I think that everyone I know now, I'm like texting them and saying, you must come to Frankfurt. It's like so beautiful.
But I read it this morning that it lost its rank of top 10 rank of being the most livable cities in the world. Yeah, from 7 to 17.
That's good for real estate prices.
But do you know where the first American city comes? It's Honolulu.
Oh, really?
Place 25.
Oh, well, Honolulu's too expensive to live in too. So yeah, no industry as well. I love Frankfurt. I love it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.